What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of IndieQuest, a celebration of the indie and obscure. Each episode, we're going to sit down and talk about a bunch of really fun indie games and just have a really good time doing it. My name is Josh, and I'm here with my co-host, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today, my friend?
Oh, man, just chilling. I think I had a hype overload because I was watching the PlayStation reveal today. I'm just going to date this episode, but that's okay. And I don't think I've come down from then. Have you?
No, not at all. And I mean, I know it's an indie show. There wasn't a ton of indie stuff in the presentation, but it was a really good show, and I'm excited for PS5 to come out. And there will be some awesome indie stuff coming down the line with stuff like Kena Bridge of Spirits. So
yeah, Bugsnax.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited, man. I was like, oh, and then I was like, today's an awesome day. I'm gonna sit down. We're gonna watch this PlayStation thing, and I'm just gonna sit down and start a brand new podcast. That's what else is better than that, you know?
And how could it get any better, right? You watch some awesome games, and then you get to go talk about some awesome games.
Yep. So I mean, we're just gonna kind of go over like the basic structure of the show a little here. Like, we're just gonna sit down. We have some games already queued up here, some indie picks. Gonna chit chat about them. And just have a good old time. Pretty much what we're going to do a lot of the times with this show is if we bring a game to the show, it's probably going to be one that we're going to be recommending. We're not going to be bringing any negativity here. We're not going to be bringing any games that are duds. We're going to be bringing games we like and we think that you should play.
Yeah, there's really no wrong answer when it comes to these. And if you listen to our pilot episode, you'll be generally familiar with the structure. But just as a quick refresher, you know, we'll be picking 2 to 4 games each episode. Some of them ones that we're playing now, and some of them ones that we've played in the past. And you know, we'll just be talking about what those games are, why we love them, you know, what the standout features are, just kind of giving them a general overview. And then at the end, we will decide for each of those games, you know, where does it fit onto our quest log? Is this a main quest, something that you absolutely cannot avoid, you need to be playing? Or is this a side quest, something that's awesome when you can find the time for it? So either way, they're both a recommendation.
I was going to put on this list today Spelunky 2, but it had literally just came out. If you haven't played Spelunky, it's a roguelike game in that it's a very challenging and punishing game. It's a platformer, and pretty much the goal is to get to the bottom of the map and avoid obstacles, collect different trinkets along the way, and just not die. And you have a very low health pool, which you can upgrade with shopkeepers and stuff in the map. But this game is brutal, man. Like, I probably did like 20 to 30 runs on this game. And like, I downloaded the game and I did my first run. And I'm like, okay, I've played Spelunky before. The sequel's gonna, I can get pretty far. I literally died like within 3 jumps. So I was like, okay, this is Spelunky. But yeah, that's not one of my recommendations, but I'm curious, what is your first indie pick for today?
Yeah, let's go into it. So the first game I'm bringing here is a side-scrolling platformer called Spinch. That's Spinch. It's important that I tell you how to spell it because this is one of the hardest games to Google ever because everything autocorrects to spinach. And you get a bunch of pictures of leafy green spinach and you can't actually find any screenshots of the game. But if you click that little, you know, I actually did mean to search for Spinch. You'll eventually find it. So Spinch is developed by Queen Bee Games. It's published by Akupara Games, which hadn't done a lot of other games I had played before, but they have published a couple other things. Like Etherborn is maybe one of their more famous ones you might have heard of. But
no.
Yeah, not a super huge publisher from what I've seen. But they have a decent number of titles under their catalog. And I think Queen Bee Games is a relatively new developer. I think they only have one other game. But this came out in 2020. It just came out recently for Switch and PC. And if you're looking up screenshots of this game, right away, one of the like standout features, one of the most striking things about it is its visual style. It has this kind of like, I've seen it described as kaleidoscope, but it's really just sort of these psychedelic, really bright rainbow visuals. A lot of like line work and like I don't know how to describe it other than just like squiggly line animation. Like everything. You remember back those fruit roll-ups when they had the string versions of the fruit roll-ups that you could like pull individual like licorice strings off of and they would make pictures?
Yeah.
Imagine that kind of for the visual style, as much as that helps.
I was watching a trailer a little while ago. Like, how does it play? Like, is it play as good as it looks?
Yeah, so this is a side-scrolling platformer. The controls for the game feel pretty similar to some other precision platformers. I mean, the most obvious comparison is probably something like Super Meat Boy. So your character is very small on the screen relative to the size of the screen. And you're just trying to get from one side of the level to the other. And the thing that sort of mixes that up is you have, at any time you can do like a single dash. And every time you touch the ground, that dash resets. And so you can either dash on the ground to get some extra speed, or when you jump into the air, you can use it as kind of like an air dash. You still have a little bit of gravity, so you still will fall a little bit as you're doing it, but you do get like a nice burst of speed forward. And so because of that, it's a very fast game. You're dashing all the time. A lot of times you're being chased by enemies and you need to dash to get away from them. So if you imagine levels that are usually 2 to 5 minutes long where you're just dashing to one side as fast as you can, avoiding whatever enemies and like stage hazards and things come up, that's pretty good way of describing it.
Is it kind of like a Celeste or Meat Boy where you have like a stage and if you have to keep repeating the stage over and over? Is it like I call those games splatformers because you die and you have to respawn multiple times. Is it like that, or is it more like, hey, get from A to B like a Mario or whatever?
More like a Mario. There are checkpoints in the levels. So a level in total will only usually take like 3-4 minutes. But there will still be checkpoints in it with the expectation that you might die in any given like 60-second segment of the level. So even though it feels like some of those platformers, structurally it's more similar to a traditional 2D platformer. And there are some levels that sort of flip it on its head a little bit, and you're doing a lot of like vertical travel. So, you know, if you imagine like you being chased by a monster, or like, you know, lava is rising and you're trying to outrun it, that type of thing. You do a lot of that type of platforming too. And then within those levels, every level has 3 different children of yours that you can find. And every couple of levels will have a hidden bonus stage that you can unlock. And finding those children in each level, one, that's sort of like the main conceit of the story, is you're trying to basically recollect your kids. But finding them is actually really relevant, because how many of those like hidden children you find in each level will affect your ability to fight the boss at the end of the world.
Oh, does it like give you more power, or what does it do? Like, how does that affect your skill set, I guess? It's real strange. The boss fights I've never seen another game do it like this. So every world will consist of let me do the math. 4 levels and 2 bonus levels if you unlock both of the bonus levels. So that's a total of 12 children that you can find. And then when you unlock a bonus level, you have 1 shot to try to unlock an extra bomb, which is the reward for doing good in the bonus level. And so your 12 children and your 2 bombs collectively get loaded into this like pneumatic tube in the boss arena. Nice.
And so on one end of the boss arena, there'll be a button with all of your children and bombs, basically all of your ammo. And you press that button, and then you'll need to dodge the boss to get to the other side of the boss arena, where there's another button that when you're standing on it, it shoots all those children and bombs out like bullets. And so you're hopping back and forth from different sides of the boss arenas, like basically loading your weapon and then firing your weapon at the boss using good timing. And so the more you found throughout the levels, the more ammo you have and the easier the boss fights are. That's
a really interesting mechanic that I can really imagine. Like, you're just kind of dodging all of his attacks while you're doing this, right? So you get like projectiles coming in at you or whatever, depending on the boss.
Yep, exactly. And they're usually pretty big, so they'll take up a lot of the screen. And they actually will have different phases too. So depending on how much damage they take, almost every boss in the game, in fact, I think every boss will have at least 2, usually 3 different like patterns that get harder to dodge the more damage they've taken.
Awesome, man. Like, how's the music in this game? That's my question. How does it sound?
The soundtrack there's not a lot of songs that like really got stuck in my head or anything long term, but the closest like sound profile is probably the Game Boy. Like it feels like it has kind of that like grimy chiptune that a Game Boy game has sometimes.
Like super crunchy.
Yeah, real crunch, got a good crunch to it. But it's the music fits the game really well, and they are good songs. Like I would be happy to listen to them on YouTube or something down the line. It's just they're not quite as melody heavy to get stuck in your head as maybe some other games.
Any other just random thoughts about the game like that you want to add?
Yeah. So if there's a couple things that I can give people a fair warning on ahead of time. One is that this game gets really hard at the end, especially the last world, especially the last level. So for most of the game, like I said, the levels take like 2 to 5 minutes, and you can tell how long they take because they all have a timer running in the corner. The idea being that you could replay the level and try and beat your best stage time. So most levels, 2 to 3 minutes. Some of the longer levels, like in the worlds that have like water mechanics, would take maybe 8 minutes to beat. But the very last level took me like 75 minutes to beat. Like I think if you added up every single other stage time I had, they all collectively were less than just my time on this one last level.
Wow.
So going in, know that it really ramps up in terms of difficulty at the very end. And there's a little bit of hitching. Sometimes when a level first loads, or if there's a lot of stuff happening on screen, the game will kind of stutter for a second. But what's nice is actually the developer just a couple of days ago, as of recording this, released a patch that did a lot to alleviate a bunch of that, at least on the Switch version that I played.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it was Switch or PC. So I guess if you played on PC, it'd probably be smoother, maybe.
I'm thinking so, yeah. And I played on my Switch Lite, and which is obviously handheld, so maybe even docked on the Switch, it would run a little bit better too. But I mean, overall, the game does run very well. It's just a few situations where it can sort of grind on you a little bit.
That's to be expected, especially when it's games that are made by small teams like this.
Yeah, I think it's 1 or 2 people on this team really that did the bulk of the work. So yeah, pretty interesting game. Not one I knew anything about going into it. I mean, I picked this one up basically completely on a whim. I was on the Switch eShop, I was scrolling through the new releases, and that art style, it just jumps out at you. It's so different from what you've seen in other games that I took a chance on it, and it's pretty fun.
I had seen the name, and I've seen the gameplay in the past. It didn't jump out at me like right away, but like definitely going to give it a shot now, just from your description and stuff. Sounds cool. I want to try those bosses. The boss fights, that was the most fascinating thing I think about that game for me, just your description on that.
I've never seen another game do it like that, so a big shout out to them for finding a way to creatively do boss fights in a 2D platformer, which there's been thousands of at this point.
I'm going to do kind of a sad game. My first indie pick's going to be sad. There's going to be a lot of sad indie picks because I feel like they tend to tackle subject matter that's a little more real and true to life a lot of times, and they're not afraid to take a sad subject matter or something that's not talked about too often and turn it into a game. So the game I chose was Before I Forget. It's developed and published by, I think it's only 3 or 4 people, and the name of the studio is Threefold Games, and it's on PC. This is a first-person narrative game. It's a walking simulator, basically, if you want to use that term. So pretty much the concept of the game is you are this woman that keeps waking up in her house and trying to explore the house. It kind of has a Gone Home feel. If you've played Gone Home, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so pretty much you're going to go through the house, explore, just find every little nook and cranny and see what she has to say about it. And as you go through and you kind of discover her life and what happened to her, she is very forgetful. She has amnesia. Or not amnesia. Wow. Dementia. Wow. Anyway, She has amnesia. We'll said it again.
You got this.
Yeah, she has dementia, not amnesia. That's a completely different thing. You'll be exploring the house. She'll start having panic attack in different situations. So, say she looks at the front door and she sees a black hole in the ground, like, oh, she's scared of the front door of going outside. Pretty much when you are walking through the environment, it kind of has a polygonal look to it, kind of. And when you actually inspect an item in the environment, say I pick up a picture frame, the picture will kind of write itself in, like draw itself in, and the environment around it will get more colorful as she has her memories. So it's a nice little effect.
Yeah, I'm looking at screenshots and it looks like, you can't really tell, but it looks like a lot of the room sort of starts out either very white or very, very muted, and then you're kind of, sounds like filling that in as you go.
Yeah, pretty much. And I did just notice there was different little environmental things that will change as things happen. So this is like one of the very first situations. This game's not very long. It's only like maybe an hour, 20, hour and 30, depending on how long you take looking around the environments. So it's a pretty short game. But there's a part at the very beginning where she's talking to herself. Pretty much you're kind of hearing her inner monologue as she's walking through this house. And she says, I need to go right now. And then you realize, oh, she needs to use the restroom, right? And she has dementia, so she doesn't remember where the restroom is. So you're going through different doors. And as you go through the doors, every single door leads to the closet. Every door that you go to leads to the closet because she can't remember where the bathroom is. And then eventually she says, oh, I didn't make it, and you're in the bathroom. So what I notice in the environment later on when I'm walking past the closet is the closet looks like old and moldy now because she had that bad experience in there, like had black fringes to it. It looked really dark and menacing, like she didn't want to go back in there. Yeah, so it's a really interesting game, and you slowly piece together the storyline going through it. And I wouldn't say I was in tears at the end or anything, but it was very emotional, and it put me in a different point of view that I wouldn't have experienced otherwise.
Are there things that you're discovering throughout the house, like optional things, or is it more going from kind of story point to story point in a linear way?
It's kind of non-linear because you wake up in one bedroom and then you can kind of explore whatever bedroom or area you want. And there are little moments when she looks at, like, okay, say there's like this constellation map on the screen or on the wall. You walk up there and she'll have like this memory of talking to one of her family members. It gets really colorful and beautiful when she's having her memories. And there might be like a little mini game inside there. Like there, it's like find the constellations and the stars as she talks about them and stuff. It's kind of, I guess, really like on the nose how the color is used. Like when she's not remembering stuff, it's very pale, but when she has nice memories, everything turns colorful and nice. But yeah, I mean, pretty much you go through the house, and I feel like there are missable things, but there are definitely areas where it triggers the next part of the storyline when you find it.
The use of color is pretty striking, even if just I look at screenshots here. Even when stuff's filled in with color, it has this really nice, almost watercolor kind of palette to it. It looks really good.
Yeah, the art style is, I would say it definitely looks like a budget game at times. I'm not going to say it looks beautiful all the time, but when it has the nice imagery and the nice contrast, it really does give you that, when she is having her panic attacks, it definitely gives you that feel like, holy crap, this is pretty intense. And then when she's having a nice memory, you definitely feel the emotions coming from them.
Awesome. And you mentioned like that constellation thing. So are there puzzles in this game, or are there any like objects that you find and use, or is it pretty light in terms of puzzle solving?
I wouldn't say there's any puzzle solving at all. It's mostly just kind of just discovering things in the house. I know it sounds boring, but that's kind of what these games are, you know?
I'm all about that type of thing, right? So that doesn't faze me. It's just two different experiences.
Maybe boring's a pretty derogative term. I would say it sounds boring just saying, oh, you're just walking around the house. But no, really, you're uncovering the story and you're learning about this woman's life.
I always like when someone is tying mechanically to the theme that they're going for or to the story that they're trying to tell. So them, even if it is a little, like you said, heavy-handed or a little on the nose, them using the color and like the navigation around the house to represent dementia, or at least an aspect of dementia is pretty cool. And not something I think I've seen in any other game before. So,
all in all, I thought it was a really nice little game just to put yourself into a different situation that you wouldn't normally find yourself in, especially in a video game.
And let me throw your question back at you. How's the soundtrack?
It's just mostly piano music. There's not really much sound effects besides the voice acting. The voice acting is okay. There's voice acting. She's actually speaking. You're not just reading text. And the voice acting is not bad. I would say it's probably a little amateurish at times, but it still conveys the message quite well. And the music is based off of her husband's piano music, which I'll leave it at that. So when we were walking to the house, it'll be kind of quiet. You'll hear some sound effects that sound almost a little bit louder than you would really think they are. So, good example, you'll go to the bathroom and the toilet's right there. You'll hear like this really loud, echoey, like crazy sound. So I guess maybe her sense of sound is like just really extreme, you know. And that's kind of, I was wearing headphones the whole time, so that made it even more noticeable because it's kind of quiet, and then you'll hear like a like that, and then I went into the bathroom and it's the toilet making that sound. Like, holy crap, that's crazy. And then whenever she has her nice memories, it's just like really like peaceful and melodic, like piano music, which is pretty nice.
I always like a good piano soundtrack. This game looks awesome. I'm curious, where did you find out about this, or how did you come across it?
I think it was a podcast I was listening to, and they mentioned that, hey, I've been playing this game, and maybe like a kind of funny podcast or something. I can't remember honestly right now. What is your second indie pick? I'm trying to work on the transitions here, guys. Bear with me.
All right, for my second pick, I chose one. I pulled one from the back catalog, although we're only going like a year and a half into the past at this point, so it's not too far back. But one that means a lot to me in a game that I really love, and that's Sayonara Wild Hearts. So, for anyone unfamiliar with Sayonara Wild Hearts, this is developed by Simogo, I think is how you pronounce it. It's published by Annapurna Interactive, which I have a suspicion that you'll hear a lot on this show. Maybe even some themed episodes down the line, because it's a publisher I trust a lot and really like what they put out.
They're awesome. I feel like I've never been disappointed by an Annapurna game.
No, not at all. They've got a good eye for picking stuff out, and some of my favorite games of all time published by them. But this came out in 2019, and it originally came out, I mean, it's on all platforms at this point. You know, it's on mobile, it's on PC, PS4, Xbox, Switch, everything. I think it kind of got its first push because it was one of the early Apple Arcade games, and a lot of people kind of considered it to be one of the best games on the service. But I originally played it on the Switch my first time, and then I've since played it on many other platforms too. But what this game is, essentially, if you're going to, you know, condense it down to one sentence, you're playing through a pop concept album, like a music album. So the visuals are very like pinks and purples, very high contrast, very sort of not quite neon, but close. And you play through track by track this album that sort of tells a story of this woman who you can interpret it a few different ways. I mean, she's kind of finding herself. She's learning how to get over a breakup. She's like wrestling with different parts of her experience with people she's had relationships with, however you want to look at it. But she's sort of navigating through all of these worlds, doing all this crazy like action rhythm motion type games as she battles all those different demons essentially that she has, or those different encounters that she's reminiscing on. The gameplay ends up being a mixture of a rhythm game and kind of like an endless runner action game. So the song will play and you'll be doing movements at the same time to either, you know, time button presses to the action on screen, or you'll be dodging out of the way of different obstacles and things, weaving in and out through the environments, essentially trying to not hit anything and get through each of the individual levels in one contiguous run. So I'm going to ask you, even though I think I know the answer, have you played this one before?
Yeah, I played it because it was your game of the year last year, right? Wasn't it? I'm pretty sure you're the reason I played the game. And wasn't it your game of the year, or am I wrong with that?
It was my number 2. It was pretty much tied with Outer Wilds, which we'll talk about in another episode someday.
I'm sure, and I want to play it too. So maybe we'll do a thing where I play it and then we both talk about it or something. We'll talk about that when we get there. But I actually love this game, and I think that it was probably the best thing you've recommended to me so far. Maybe in the future you'll recommend me something better. Maybe Outer Wilds. We'll see. The art style, the music, everything about this game just like was one of my favorite like of this style of like music. Like there's actually almost no game like it, but it's still like a rhythm game. It's one of my favorite like rhythm game where you're not just playing like buttons on a screen, where you're actually interacting with other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it really is hard to sell this game without it sounding like less than it is almost, because you describe the way that the levels work, which are, you know, essentially dodging obstacles, collecting these different hearts that you get for score, and trying to basically sync up to the music. And it sounds pretty simple, you know, it sounds like an endless runner, but something about the way that the art direction, the way that the levels are structured, and the camera like swings around and you do all this creative different stuff, and the music tied together, it creates this like package that is so addicting. It pulls you in, and it's just so hard to put the controller down. I remember very vividly the first time that I bought this game. I was sitting in my basement. We pulled it up. Had my girlfriend was there, and then we had one friend over at the time. This was when you could have people over. And I put it on the TV. We were talking, and I was like installing the game, and then I pulled it up with the intent to maybe start playing it. And as soon as that menu screen pops up, and like all the colors light up, and that song starts playing, and it's got like this big heart logo that's like pulsing to the music, all of us were just like entranced. Like everyone stopped talking, everyone's jaw dropped, and it was like you were just being sucked into the freaking TV. It was so cool. And then I played the whole thing through in one big sitting, and it has consistently been my kind of go-to when I'm feeling stressed or I don't know what I want to play. It's really easy to, you know, pop some headphones on and play through this game in 45 minutes to an hour, and it's basically endlessly replayable.
Okay, a couple things. One thing, I really agree with you, and I feel like this game has a nice positivity to it. The storyline has the ups and downs to it, of course, but I feel like just how upbeat the music is and how amazing it looks graphically really gives you that great positive energy. And I wanted you to go off and tell me how much you love the music here, because I know you really love it.
You said that it was my game of the year, which it almost was but wasn't. But this album was my album of the year last year. Like, I have listened to this soundtrack endlessly. So not just the sort of traditional game music where there's no vocals, but there's also a lot of vocal tracks, all of which individually could like be a synth pop hit on the radio. Like this, it's not. This is a legit album. Like, it is full on just a legit pop album, and I cannot recommend it enough. Music's done by Daniel Olson and Jonathan Eng. Look up the Sayonara Wild Hearts soundtrack on YouTube, and like instantly you'll understand. You know, songs like Mine or Gold, I think it's called. That might not be the actual name. That might just be a lyric that they say in there. But yeah, it's just unbelievable. So good.
It's awesome driving music. I've actually went to the soundtrack and just going down the highway and just blasting one of these songs. You just feel like you just want to just fly down the highway, like speed a little bit and get pulled over, you know.
It's really good. In my mind, very good like nighttime, especially, you know, like maybe it just rained, so all the blacktop is kind of shiny. So sorry, it wasn't Gold, it was Inside was the name of the song I was thinking of. But then, there's songs like Begin Again that's really good, Dead of Night, the main track, Sayonara Wild Heart. They're all just 11 out of 10 pop bops. So, and when we talk about the story, we're talking about kind of this personal journey that this one person is taking to make their way through this breakup, or however you want to interpret it. But that's all done very metaphorically through what is kind of like Sailor Moon style visuals and animations almost sometimes. Like it's very larger than life. You're almost taking the role of this like pseudo superhero with the crazy stuff that you're doing. And so the actions that you're doing in the game are much larger than life, even though the story is pretty personal, I think.
Yeah, and it feels like each of the songs has almost like a mini boss fight in it.
Yeah.
Somewhat. Yeah, and you kind of get through each of them. But this one seems like one of those games that you're just always going to like go back to, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, I imagine I'll play this one for the rest of my life, every couple of months, just pop it in. And even though it's the perfect game to play through, because once you beat the game once, you'll unlock something called Album Arcade, which essentially lets you play through every level back to back without stopping, which I think is really the ideal way to play. But there's also some really, really obscure hidden stuff and some like bonus objectives to go for. So one, there's a scoring mechanic based on how many of these objects you collect in a row in each level. So you can get, B, A, S rank on everything, which is pretty fun to go for. And then within the levels, there's also hidden these gold cards that you can try to find and collect. And they're usually like kind of off of the typical path that you'd take. You have to make some risky turns or something like that. But then on top of both of those, they have what's called the Zodiac Riddles, which I think on PS4 is associated to the trophies. But these are very, very obscure objectives that they don't tell you explicitly what you need to do. They just give you a very vague hint of what you need to do. And this is stuff like I don't want to give any of them away because they're pretty fun, but it'll be stuff like, play the same level 5 times in a row and get like an S rank, 2 A ranks, and 2 S ranks, something like that. Like something very specific that you would never be able to do accidentally. You'd have to basically work out the riddle yourself.
Damn, that actually sounds pretty challenging. Like, that's cool though that they have that in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they do some meta stuff too, where, again, not giving them away, but they play with some of the ideas that the game has and have you do some pretty unintuitive stuff to unlock these Zodiac riddles. So it's like a whole other level of playing it, because you go from sort of just getting lost in this world and in this story and in this soundtrack, and instead it becomes much more like a puzzle, like almost like an ARG in a weird way.
So have you gotten all those?
Not all of them, because I really don't want to look them up.
Oh yeah, you're trying to like stumble upon them as you play, like naturally, pretty much.
Me and a couple friends of mine actually who also really love this game. For a while, we had like text groups going, and we were like theorizing on what some of these might be, and like sending them back and forth to each other. And we'd be like, "What? Well, maybe this one means that we need to beat this level 20 times in a row." And one of us would be like, "All right, forget it. I'm going to go do it and see if that's what it is." And sometimes we would be right, and sometimes we wouldn't be. So it's pretty.
That's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Sweet, man. That game, I highly recommend it too. Like, I just thinking about it, I kind of want to go sit down and play the arcade mode, because I did play through it and did it normally, of course, and it stops after each stage. And then I played through it again like the next day with the arcade mode, and I just like, it just blew me away at the time. It's just really good. I would say it's a remarkable experience. It's fantastic.
It is, and very unlike anything that I've ever played before. And again, I think very easy to immediately connect with. When that start menu pops up, you'll know right away if this is something that you want to go in for, because it has a style to it. But you got one more pick for me?
Yeah, that was Sayonara Wild Hearts, if we didn't say the name enough. And this last pick I have is a game from 2019 as well, and it's Katana Zero. It's developed by ASCII Soft, and that's just one dude, and published by Devolver Digital. I think And it's on Switch and PC, I should say. And I think that he actually started development all by himself and got through most of the game, and then Devolver actually gave him some help to finish it up and publish it. Katana Zero is a pretty awesome game. It's I would say this game is badass, like from beginning to end, man. It's a kick-ass game. Like, this is one of those games that I sat down and I just couldn't stop playing. I kind of got like halfway through it, and then like the next day I was like doing whatever at work or whatever, just thinking about, oh man, I want to get back and play this game. I pretty much binged through this in a couple days, and then I played it again like a week later. So let me describe the actual gameplay to you guys. So pretty much you're a guy who wears like a bathrobe, ninja bathrobe, I guess.
Something like yeah, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have a katana, and basically you have to go through rooms. It's kind of like Meat Boy, where you have to get to the end of a stage, but you have to kill everybody in the room. Mm-hmm. And it's a quick kill for you and for the enemies. So you're going to be going through these stages. Super fast-paced combat. You have a katana. You can cut people's heads off. You can backstab people. So what happens is if you go through an entire stage, say there's 6 guys on a stage. You have to go through a vent, jump down, stealth kill a guy, go around a turret, kill another guy, and you kill everybody, but the last guy kills you. What happens is you get like this VHS rewind effect, and you have to redo that room until you get it and you kill everybody in the room. That's pretty much the main gameplay loop in here, and they add more things to it. You like later on you can pick up items. Later on you can get better at your parry. There's a parry system as well. Basically, you kind of have control of time in this game, which is kind of interesting because when you do the parry system, you can, I think it's like L2, and you slow down time a little bit, and you can see when people shoot you, and you can like deflect their bullets back at them and stuff. So you're pretty much a killing machine throughout this entire game, and I just have a lot of fun playing it. I just think the gameplay loop is just very addicting.
You saying it makes you feel badass is so spot on, because you'll, in these individual screens, a screen of like maybe 4 or 5 enemies in this one section, you'll, as you try something and die, you'll sort of develop like a route through the level crafted through your own mistakes, and by the end it'll be all muscle memory, and you'll be like, all right, I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna hit this dude, then I'm gonna turn this way, slow down time, hit that bullet, kick this can up to this other guy who's gonna knock him out. And it's so many things will be happening at once, but you sort of like internalized everything that's going on. And that slowdown really helps a lot. And then when you finally do beat the level or finally do get through it, it'll play like in real time what the actions that you just took, so it'll remove the slowdown. So it'll just look like something from the freaking Matrix, where you're just like slashing bullets away and doing all kinds of crazy jumps and stuff. It's crazy fun.
Yeah, it's really cool. They kind of do like a security camera, like this is what the security camera saw. And the thing, I love the graphics in the game. Like, I think it's really nice. It's pixel art 2D game, and it's like maybe like a high bit. It's not really 16 bits. It's more, they put more into it, and a lot of really crazy animations and stuff. Just the tone of the game is just really like dark and grimy and grungy throughout the entire thing. You're always in like sewers and like warehouses, and it has almost like a cyberpunk future vibe to it when it comes to like the actual art style, like the color palette for everything, kind of neon looking, kind of like, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing that adds to it is definitely like the hyper violence of the thing, and it's like really like in your face, and just like we were saying, you feel like a badass. And the music is like this like relentless like I guess synthwave at times. There's some trance in there. It's just like really like in your face, like really pumping the entire time, which really adds to the badassness.
Very high bass, very high adrenaline. So, you said you went all the way through this one. I have played it, obviously, because I'm familiar with the mechanics, but I did not beat it. I think I just got distracted by probably some other indie game at the time. But one thing that jumped out at me was the story. It's so just kind of like wild. What was your take on it?
The story, dude. This is a lot of times when you play a game, it's like, okay, you have this power and you just have this power, right? Like, oh, you can rewind time, whatever. This game is all about explaining why you can control time. It's about the military construct that came up with this pill and made super soldiers that can rewind time so they can just like go through and kill entire armies, pretty much. And you are like one of these people that got experimented on, and you have this power that you can control time. And you go to the therapist, like this therapist, and there's dialogue options here and there, and they do affect the, I don't know if it affects like the outcome of like the gameplay scenarios, but it does definitely affects how people talk to you and like different dialogue trees and stuff. So you go to the therapist and she gives you drugs pretty much like every day. And that's the drug that makes it to where you can stop time and basically go through and just slaughter entire rooms of people in real time. Because pretty much when you die, you actually are experiencing every single one of those deaths. You're just literally rewinding time to before you died and then figuring out this thing in the actual lore of the storyline, which is just really fascinating to me. So yeah, I did talk about the dialogue trees too, which I think is pretty unique for, especially for a 2D game. Say you're talking to somebody and you don't really even care about the scenario or what they're talking about, you can just button mash through the dialogue and not say anything, and the people will just act more hostile towards you and stuff. And so you can skip entire dialogue trees, or you can skip the good, or you can pick the good path of dialogue tree or the bad path. It's a little subtle. You're not really sure, but I played it two different ways. The first way I played was like, I'm going to agree with everything everybody says, do what everybody says. And the second time, I'm just button mashing through stuff. And I actually had an extra fight because the person's like, dude, you're never talking to me. Why aren't you listening to what I have to say? And then you actually have to fight them and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's real interesting. I remember the story was like hard to follow. I not in like a bad way. It was just like there was a lot going on. So does it wrap up in a clean enough way by the end where you kind of feel like you sort of know what happened and what was going on?
I will do like a little tiny minor spoiler. Let's just say there's another soldier that had the same thing happen to him, and you end up having to fight him with a bunch of crazy rewind mechanics.
Oh, I can only imagine what that fight would be like.
It's so good, man. This game is like has some really cool set pieces. Another one that really stands out to me is this really long, extended like motorcycle sequence, and it really gets you on the edge of your seat when you're playing. The music's going, you see the skyline in the background, guys are coming at you, kind of like TMNT style, whatever, Turtles in Time, where you're like dodging shit, and it's just like really intense. And same mechanic. If you blow up there, your motorcycle blows up, you just rewind and then keep going type of thing. But yeah, it's really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I really should get back to and finish that one up. I have no good reason to stop. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I just figured I'd bring it on the show and recommend it because it's a very memorable game to me. From the story, from the gameplay, it's just very addicting and just all around awesome game.
Awesome. Anything else on Katana Zero?
I think that's about it, man. I feel like I covered everything. So you know what we're gonna do now? We're going to recap all these games, and we're going to place them either on the main quest. Is it main quest, right? And side quest.
Main quest or side quest, yep.
So if it's a main quest game, it's a game that's a definitive must-play. You need to get off your couch right now, go to whatever store, or stay on your couch, whatever. Go to your favorite store and buy this game and play it as soon as you can. And then the other one is a side quest. It's a great game. We really recommend it, but just throw it on your backlog, and when you feel like it's time to play it, check it out. So we have 4 games here. We're going to start with your games, Steve. We got Spinch and Sayonara Wild Hearts. Where do you want to put them?
Yeah, I'm thinking for Spinch. It's a really interesting game, but there's a couple things that I think hold it back a little bit from that main quest status. So I'm leaning towards side quest. One, the game, like I mentioned before, that difficulty curve, I'm not above admitting that I wasn't getting like angry, but there was a couple times where I set that switch down and I was like, am I gonna finish this game? Like, this is so hard. And I think there's some other stuff they could have done, like all the bonus levels are the same. They're kind of, they reuse the same mini game basically over and over again. But those are my gripes, I guess you'd say. But again, awesome, like looking game, very fun, feels very good in your hands. I think it just slightly misses that main quest, so I'm going to put that one into side quest.
Okay, so Sayonara Wild Hearts is the main quest, right?
That's the easiest main quest I've ever had. Yeah.
For all the things we talked about before. Yeah, if you have any final thoughts on that game, go ahead and shoot them out here. But we already know what you think, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I picked this game for episode 1 for a reason. I feel like I wanted to bring something that is an obvious main quest game. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough. I've never recommended it to someone yet that hasn't liked it. Although I do try to pick and choose my recommendations based on if I think the person will like it. But yeah, I would definitely put that main quest. And this one, I know you have played, so if it was your pick,
yeah,
you'd be putting at main quest?
Main quest easily, yeah. And I did the same thing because you said, "Oh, I'm going to bring a game I really like," so I said, "Okay, I'm going to do the same thing." So I brought Katana Zero, and I'm going to put that on main quest as well. But I will do the caveat of if you guys don't like that style of game, I wouldn't really recommend playing it. Obviously, it's a super fast-paced action game. The story is really out there. I think it's worth experience. And if you just want to feel like John Wick, I said John Woo, you know what I mean. You want to feel like the Matrix. You want to feel like a badass samurai burnout type character. I think it's worth your time. It's super cool. So that's going to be on the main quest for me, Katana Zero. And for the other one, the more sad Amnesia game. I'm just kidding. Dementia game.
Amnesia's a different indie game.
Oh, that sequel's coming out. Anyway, before I forget, I think this is a really solid side quest game. It's a good game. It's worth experiencing. I would say maybe find it on sale. Get it a little cheaper than full price. I think it wasn't very much. I think it was only like $10 or something. But get it for $5 or so. If you're in the mood to just experience like a nice narrative, that's pretty much the recommendation I would have there. I did enjoy the game, but it didn't I didn't shake my world, my foundation. No other game's going to be the same after I play it. Not that situation. I just thought it was a really solid and great narrative. So that's going to be a side quest game for me.
Awesome. So yeah, then just to wrap that up, that's 2 main quest games. We're putting in Katana Zero and Sayonara Wild Hearts.
Side quest, we're going to be putting in the other 2 games. Before I forget, and I completely spaced and forgot this, and the other one was Spinch. So, if you guys want to take a look at the quest log as it is built, as we put more games on the quest log, we do have a doc up for you guys to go to and look at. It's called the quest log. Obviously, we already said that. It's bit.ly/questlog. If you want to go there, take a look at it. Right now, there's only 4 games on it, but later in the future, we might have a lot more. We will have a lot more. So, it's kind of a cool little list. Like, oh, what game... I just want to play something random. Maybe I'll go back and look and check it out type of situation. I thought that would be fun to build a list throughout this little podcast. Absolutely.
Handy resource. One that I'm happy to build, but I wish I had one of my own that I could reference.
Yeah, that's true. Because I know me. I like to some days sit down and just go through like Itch or Steam and just find the weirdest shit. So hopefully I'll bring some stuff like that in the future, and that'll be part of the list.
Oh yeah, we'll have a whole range, I think, of indie picks. From I don't want to call them like super popular indies, but I'm not above bringing one of like the more well-known indies, or like you said, something real obscure that we pulled off Itch. It can be anywhere. We like good games at any scale.
Yeah, and like I could just bring like Teenage Blob or something random like that you never heard of. So. This final segment we're going to do today, I think the last segment of the show is going to be kind of rotating. We're going to kind of do different things each time. We might bring some of the segments back. But the one I pitched for this episode was to open it up, was indies to follow. Games we're looking forward to, interesting looking indie games. And I found 2 selections here that just really, I've been following for a while, and they really stand out to me, and I'm very excited to play them. First up, I got this game called 2D and Top D, and it's a two brothers developing this game. And the simple premise for the game is, well, it's kind of maybe not quite simple premise, is it's a puzzle game where you play 2 different characters, and it's like a 2D puzzle platforming game. And one of the characters is completely flat 2D, and then when you push a button, it rotates up to like almost an isometric 3D-ish view for this character that can move environment like blocks and stuff, so the other character can get through the environment. Am I explaining this well? I don't know.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you watch a video. So pull up a trailer if you're listening to this and look up 2D and Top D. A good example would be, maybe the 2D character, there's a wall of fireballs that's being shot that there's no way that you can get through. So you swap from that 2D to the isometric view, and then the isometric character can then push a block, sort of Zelda style, and block that stream of fireballs. Then when you switch back, that block turns into just like a platform, and now there's a gap that you can use to get past that. So you swap between both of those to sort of like collectively get both of those brothers through a given area.
Yeah, and I think it has a nice little art style. It's, I would say, very, very simple, but still really nice to look at. The chiptunes I heard during it sounded pretty nice, and I just thought that this would be a cool game to put on you guys' like radar and just check out if you get the opportunity. And you can follow them on Twitter at, what is that, Diet Z Rabbi.
Why don't you spell that for people?
DIETZRIBI. Follow them on Twitter. Give them a follow. Tell them that we sent you. And check it out, man. I think that game is going to be something cool.
Yeah, I can really see that being a game that sort of like blows up for a while on social media, because it's very gifable, for lack of a better word. Like, you can really condense what makes it cool down into like a 5-second short clip. So yeah, check it out. Give them a follow. Seems interesting, and maybe you'll see it on the show later on.
Yeah, you never know. And the other game, I've been following this game for a long time, man. I think 2-3 years, something like that. It's Guinea Pig Parkour.
How can you not like a game called Guinea Pig Parkour?
You want to describe like what the visuals look like for this game for people?
Yeah, so it's got this 2D hand-drawn style that, for my money, looks like a combination between like if anybody has played those more recent Wonder Boy and the Dragon's Trap remakes, so like 50% that, 50% Earthworm Jim. So the animations are really like exaggerated, a lot of like bending and wiggling, as weird as that sounds, all in this very like bright, colorful style.
Yeah, and he has a trailer that's like, this is all one guy too. So if you pull up a trailer and just see how striking the imagery is, this is one guy hand animating every single one of these characters in the environment and stuff. And I would say like a good word for like everything here is maybe over animated, but not in like a bad way. Does that make sense? Like everything's maybe like extra animated. Like you jump and his belly like bubbles up, and then like his arms wiggle to his side, and his head's like his hair's going everywhere. It's like every little thing he can animate, he animates, and it makes it like this really interesting style, like this really unique look. And like I was watching some like animation loops he was posting on Twitter, and like you do like this like somersault, and he literally like turns into like this like super squiggly blob ball, and then he unfolds basically when he lands. It's crazy. It's really cool.
It's not like a ragdoll style, but it's almost best described as like characters don't have any bones. Like they're not restricted by what their bodies should be able to do. I actually, in looking at more screenshots here, I almost get like a little bit of Cuphead DNA, not in that old like 20s cartoon art style, but the way that enemies in that game sort of were always moving and very wiggly and jiggly and kind of like had like a Jello vibe going on. Well, there's a little bit of that.
So pretty much it looks like it's your standard 2D fare where you're going through levels. It looks like there's like a ledge grab and like wall jump and, parkour. It's in the title. And I think the main thing he's collecting in the environment is coffee beans. And he loves coffee. If you see any of the trailers, he's drinking coffee. You see some of the villains. There's like bad guy Starbucks cups with like evil eyebrows that chase you and stuff. So yeah, it just looks super fun and positive and like just like a really lighthearted, like almost Saturday morning cartoon, the game almost in some respects,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seems really good. So if that's intrigued you at all, and I can't imagine the type of person that isn't intrigued by the name Guinea Pig Parkour. Again, give them a follow. Let them know we sent you. They can be found on Twitter at gpigparkour. That's at GPIGPARKOUR.
Awesome. So there are some indies to follow. And I think we reached the end of the show, our very first episode. How do you feel?
Feeling good. 4 awesome games and some new ones to check out that you might see in the future. I'm just excited to bring more cool indie games to people. Like, if even one person takes one of these games as a recommendation and finds a new game that they love, then this was worth it.
Yeah, and this show's been percolating in my brain for a while, and finally sitting down, I just feel like super content. I'm happy with it, and I'm excited for the future. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening to the show. It means a lot to us. You can find me on Twitter at Frantic Society, and Steve, also known as Blink, over at Blinkum on Twitter.
Yeah, and if you want to stay up to date with the show, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at IndieQuest Pod.
We want community indie game suggestions and questions, so if you have any, feel free to send us an email over at indiequestpod@gmail.com, and who knows, you might hear them on the show. And remember, be good, take care, keep playing those indie games. Now, Steve, why don't you sign us off and say goodbye to all those beautiful folks out there?
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Hope you enjoyed episode 1. And yeah, go give those indie games some love.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Now, Steve, why don't you sign us off and say goodbye to all those...
I ruined that one for you.
That's fine. That's fine. No, it's like everything was going good. Like a super good flow, and then I'm just like stuttering and fucking up at the end. It's okay. It happens.
Yeah, that's the magic of editing. You literally have one sentence left to say.